I don't know how modding works. I just know that there's a brand new Han Solo video.
Welcome back to Cartridge Space Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
And for the first time ever, joined by Cort.
Also, hello!
He is responsible for introducing us to Mark.
I love Mark. Hi, Mark.
Friends of the show may know Mark from various episodes.
Sonic Nightmare Creatures.
Game dev. Cort has joined us to talk about the raddest military man ever in existence, Rad Spencer.
Rad Nathan Spencer.
The Bionic Commando. I mean, you don't have to use his middle name unless he shoots a sitting president. So
he does sit a sitting Führer.
That's good, though. When you shoot Hitler, that's good.
Who is at the time sitting.
So you don't have to use his middle name. Yes, Bionic Commando, the video game that stars a man with a grappling hook up his shirt sleeve in the NES original. They don't really go into where the hook's coming out of. And then later on, a classic remake where they give you a anime-style robot arm. I believe we could delve into the thought process that the U.S. military had in deciding to put a grappling hook on a human being and why they believed that was the best course of action to fight Nazis.
Well, I think as a first step in the NES version, at least based on the box art, the grappling hook is sort of a gauntlet that he is wearing around his forearm. And that is not going to work at all. That is going to rip your shoulder right out of its socket the first time you jump off a cliff and, latch onto a ledge 3 stories down. So I can't imagine that ended very well for the first round of prototype test subjects.
Usually when you have a video game where you have this cool new weapon, it's something really original that doesn't exist. But we could do this now. You could have with a winch, with a hook on it, you could make the Bionic Commando arm. And the fact that no one's done it probably tells you all you need to know.
I mean, to reel yourself in using just your wrist would be horrible.
I mean, even just from a standstill, it would be horrible. But while falling, and then grabbing something with your wrist.
And you do a lot of falling and shooting your grappling hook in this game.
You do.
And
you do.
Did they have some sort of spy inside? And they're like, okay, you got to tell us what bionic weapon to put on this guy. Do we put a bionic bazooka, a bionic sword? And he's like, yo, they have so many grapple points in this base. You got to put a grappling hook on this guy.
Well, actually, one of the things I appreciate about this game is that, I'm a big grappling hook junkie in the games I enjoy, and there's a range of them, right? In some games, it is literally just a thing that you throw out into space and it pulls you toward it, and at that point, basically your character is flying, and that's fun, but really, it's just your character is flying. And at the other extreme, I want to say the Zelda games are guilty of this. There are so few grapple points, then they're only there to get you across a gap that you couldn't otherwise get across. And the grappling hook at that point basically becomes a key to get through a door. But in Bionic Commando, you can grapple onto almost anything that is a physical object in the world. And yeah, the levels are laid out such that these things are placed conveniently to get across obstacles, but it's skill-based. It's not just you're flying around the level, and it's not just you walk up to the designated grapple point and hit the grapple button and you cross the gap. There's real skill involved, and I enjoy that aspect of it very much.
Modern games like Uncharted 4 are guilty of the grapple point thing.
Right.
Where you have this cool grappling hook that you can use when it says right trigger on screen. It's no Attack on Titan.
Yeah. Just Cause has a similar mechanic too, I think.
Yeah. Just Cause's grappling gun is basically 3D Bionic Commando because you can shoot that sucker into anything.
Yeah. But you can also detach it from yourself and just hook a guy to a car or something, I think.
I believe you're right.
You can hook a guy to 2 cars going in opposite directions.
Ew.
That's cruel. And messy.
I never did that.
I presume you'd only do it to really bad people.
By really bad people, do you mean the first person I saw after they gave me dual grappling hooks?
Odds are he was a bad person.
The guy that sold you dual grappling hooks.
That is definitely a bad person.
So, the layout of Bionic Commando for the NES is actually kind of interesting because it was an early example of an attempt at a sort of open world game. You could choose which zones you went to, and if you screwed up really bad and met with an enemy, you had to play Akari Warriors.
Inappropriate punishment.
And to give the illusion of even greater nonlinearity, I believe the numbers of the zones were not increasing linearly. So you were not just going through the levels in numerical order, and that made you feel like you could go anywhere.
That all sounds neat, on paper, but as someone who played this game at a young age, and since it was an NES game, I think we all remember how NES games come into your possession when you're little is a cartridge just shows up with no box or instructions, like it's like a friend of a friend's cartridge, and then you have it. This was a hard game to figure out, like the actual, like the fights, easy, but like getting around the map and like why things weren't in numerical order and everything, this was a difficult game for 10-year-old me.
Yeah, I think it caused some problems with me and counting. It was like, no, I'm sorry, teacher, that 19 comes after 1. It's in Bionic Commando.
Yeah, they wouldn't lie.
Really, that was a bold choice by Capcom. But I guess they hide things of importance in different numbers, key cards and whatnot, and Super Joe. The Nazis have a version of the Bionic Commando in this game, but he has a giant backpack that's about 9 times his size. And it just went to show how much more advanced the U.S. soldiers were in 1985 over the Nazis in 1985.
That's because all the 80s Nazi scientists had defected to 80s America.
I just imagine... you get into a fight with this guy with the 9-foot backpack. You just use your bionic arm to knock him onto his back, and then he can't get up. He's like a turtle.
That sounds plausible. He was very big.
I'm going to blow up this mother brain looking thing because Nintendo had a great idea with the mother brain thing. But all their computers look like mother brain.
Playing NES games taught me to break glass whenever possible.
But the police and your parents enjoyed that.
Yes.
So some of the zones that you can go to are the neutral zones, and you can walk around those, and they're sort of like towns, and you can talk to people, and you can get items, and you cannot fire your weapon, because if you fire your weapon, it looks like the UN peacekeeping forces show up, and you just mow those suckers down until you escape.
Just like actual UN peacekeepers.
Well, they're not the enemy soldiers, I don't think. They're punishing you for breaking the treaty, right? So this is neutral ground, and so I assume it's like the Swiss Army swooping in, and they just keep coming. And at that point, the gloves are off, and you can just tear through them as long as you want until you walk off screen.
Don't they know how rad you are?
Well, I think in that game you're actually not rad yet. You are Lad.
Lad Spencer?
Lad Spencer.
So in the Xbox 360 remake, are you the son of Lad Spencer?
I think there might be some gradual phonetic shift going on in the name here. I think Lad slowly morphed into Rad in the sequels because it sounds frankly radder.
I'm Lad. This is my son, Rad. And they're like, Lad, you're the worst person ever if that's what you named your son. It's like, Rad is looking for his wife. No one knows where she is. So, yeah, Bionic Commando, they just basically told you, here is Bionic Arm, go fight Nazis. You wake up Hitler at one point.
Well, they wake up Hitler.
Don't they wake him up while you're fighting the tank that he's in? But they call him Master D.
They do. In fact, Master D on Wikipedia redirects to the Bionic Commando page, not the page of the British rapper of the same name.
There's something perfect about that. So they don't call the Nazis in this game, and they don't have like direct swastika imagery. They have like the little bird on people's hats and whatnot.
I'm going to correct you there. The original Japanese version actually did use swastikas.
Oh wow!
With a thunderbolt behind them.
Huh. I guess we couldn't handle the real Lad Spencer.
Fragile America was just not ready for a game that portrays the bad guys as Nazis.
And now we have Wolfenstein.
I see another gem here, actually, which says that in the English version, the Nazis are referred to as the Bads, though in the backstory in the manual, it refers to them as the Nazz, Nazz, which is like just safe by a whisker there.
The rapper?
No. It looks like this is a last minute change. Like, you know what? We can't call them the Nazz. That's a little too close to home. Let's tweak that a bit more. And then they forgot to change the manual.
Someone who's funny should have just changed the Z's to a D. You're fighting the Nads.
Let's not let anybody on to, that these are the same guys that we allied ourselves with 40 years ago.
That would be bad. That never happened. History doesn't show that. So at the end of Bionic Commando for the NES, you get a rocket launcher with one shot in it, and you meet Hitler. In the long list of ways Hitler dies in video games, this shares something special with the original Wolfenstein. When you kill him in Wolfenstein, his face melts, and this one you blow Hitler's head up.
It was super gory.
3 frames long.
And they kept that going forward in the remake. I can't remember if it's the exact same scenario, but I do remember that in the end, you get to see some pretty visceral Hitler brains flying around.
And then one of the things, I think we talked about this recently, Brad, and when we were talking about Far Cry, when you're escaping the sinking boat and an enemy's like, oh, I'm not going to let you escape this death trap. Why Hitler's base is counting down because you have 60 seconds to escape. A guy attacks you. He's like, you're not escaping. It's like, what is wrong with you? You have a bionic arm too. We can just get out of here.
I can't stop being a dick.
Think of the beautiful bionic babies we could make together.
I'm a Nazz. It's all I know. You are treated to a giant explosion that you somehow fly out of, and you're hanging from the bottom with Super Joe, and when they cut to Lad and Super Joe, they look like they're just standing arm in arm, and my only thought was, how are you two supporting each other while one person's arm is coming out of their socket because they're hanging off a moving helicopter? And they're just palling around. They're like, that was pretty cool. Thanks for saving me and blowing up the Nazis and stuff. And he's like, no problem. My question would be like, are you now a double agent, Joe?
00 Joe.
Well, there's been a foreshadowing there. I'm pretty sure he does throw you under the bus later in the series, right? I'm pretty sure the way this goes down is that, like, Bionic Commando 1, they're all called Bionic Commando, which makes it very difficult to keep them straight, but in the original Bionic Commando, you kill some Hitler, and that is the same story that's told in the Bionic Commando Rearmed, and in Bionic Commando Rearmed 2, in addition to growing your sex offender mustache, you end up doing something controversial that turns the public against Bionics. And at that point, Super Joe is still your ally / commanding officer / whoever, and he throws you under the bus. He ends up blaming the entire thing on you, which is why at the beginning of the 3D Bionic Commando, you're a prisoner, and the world hates you.
Oh, yeah, that deep Bionic Commando lore.
I'm getting the sense that neither of you even read the novelization of this game.
I believe Nintendo put out a series of books where kids got transported into video games, and one of them was Bionic Commando, and I think I read that and Castlevania once, and then I questioned whether reading was a good use of your time or not.
So, I believe I mentioned how I came into the world of Bionic Commando was one day a cartridge showed up near my NES, and I turned to my brother, I said, is this yours? And, and then we had Bionic Commando for a little while, and at some point after we beat it, it was gone again on its magical journey.
I can imagine how that went. Like, Mom, this copy of Mario is broken. Mario can't jump.
He just shoots something out of his arm. He's rad.
I just keep running up against this, like, 6 inch high barrel, and I can't pass it.
So, Cort, you can explain this to me since you are a storied lore master of the Bionic Commando universe. In the 360 version, it starts and he's being led down a walkway being guarded by securities, which now makes sense since you explained Bionic Commando Rearm 2. But in that one, he has no left arm. When does he lose his left arm?
So it may be that the box art of the NES version is incorrect here, because nearly everything else in the game's story implies that the arm itself is gone and has been full-on replaced with a bionic arm that happens to include a grappling hook. And I can't remember what the canonical explanation of that is. It must have come up in the later games. In the novel, it's because ninjas attack him and chop off his arm. So there's at least one vote for ninjas. Full stop.
He's
Revolver Ocelot.
He's just hanging out one day in a park, and Ryu from Ninja Gaiden runs by and chops off his arm. It's like, I'm a better game. He's like, damn it, Ryu, I'm bleeding out. I'd like to believe it's Ryu from Ninja Gaiden. So, a ninja, probably the same ones who kidnapped the president, right? Took his arm. So, this might be in the bad dudes universe, for all we know. In the 360 version, which I'm very familiar with because I spent an entire weekend playing this game while my wife was out of town, and I finished it in 2 sittings. Choices were made. You don't have an arm, and they airdrop you into a city that has like gas.
Yes, very convenient gas at the edge of all the places they don't want you to explore.
And you can't go too deep into the city. You can't get down to street level, so that's why they call you. And they shoot a missile at you, and inside is your bionic arm. And I don't know much about bionics or attaching bionics to a human, but he just picks it up and he's like, oh wow, and snaps it onto the nub where his arm used to be. Does anyone here know if that's how bionics work?
Well, in the 80s future where the Nazis are on the rise again, that's how they work. I question the delivery method of, let's just put the equipment that our guy needs in a missile and launch it in his general direction and hope it lands near him but doesn't hit him. Yeah,
it would be a shame if it got destroyed en route or shot down or exploded, because then they'd have to find a new dead wife to turn into an arm for him.
The whole operation would be set back for like a decade. He'd have to meet somebody and like date her and get engaged, and then they get married. And
it's real cold. So his buddy Super Joe throws him under the bus, takes away his original bionic arm, and I guess while he's in jail he met somebody and got married, and then they killed her and made a bionic arm out of her.
That's true. This must not be his original bionic arm, because he had that one from the beginning. So maybe he's had multiple dead wives here.
Which part of the dead wife do you make the arm out of?
Maybe he's got a whole series of them. And whenever he gets an upgrade,
he's like, I finally let go of Becky and I met Roberta, and then she vanished too, but I got this spiffy new robotic arm. So that means he didn't know the first robotic arm was his dead wife, because he only found out about that in the 360 game. I liked that 360 game.
Presumably not,
it felt like a platinum game in a way of it just chaos all the time. It was so stupid with the gas on the ground and whatnot. But that game gets a little bit crazy at the end in ways I was not prepared for a couple years ago.
What are you thinking of here?
When you are on the giant flying thing, and then the people get the bird wings, bionic bird wings, and you have to grab them and pull them out of the air and rip their wings off. And that might be their dead wives too.
How many marriages must we ruin for one boss battle?
I just remember that seems super mean to rip someone's bionics off, even though putting his bionics on was just snapping it on. I still think there'd be wiring of some sort into your nervous system.
You know, have you ever tried to install a car seat?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know how difficult that is. And if you don't do it right, it'll just not be anchored in place. So I'm just imagining he just like slaps this arm on. He's like, it's fine. And then the first time he goes to grab something, like the arm's just gone. He's like, aw. Like, you gotta fasten it. There's a connector.
That's the DLC. Him just trying to climb up a tree to get his arm.
Just chasing after a car.
Now here's a scenario for you. So if it attaches that easily, like as you're saying, it must detach equally easy, right?
Yeah.
And so given that they've also established that the bond between the wearer and the bionic must be very personal. What happens if this horde of bionics are fighting at the end? What if they're getting suited up, and two of them put on the wrong wings, and like is there some weird like underground swinger subculture among the bionics? Like
they just throw all the wings into a bowl and pull them up.
It's just cheating on everyone at all times. And, I mean, there's repercussions to having your dead wife in your arm. Like, what if you're at home and you just want to drink a milk real quick, but you don't want to get a cup out, and you drink from the gallon, and then your bionic arm starts punching you in the side of the head? It's like, no, don't do that. Because the arm can't talk to you, except for in that real weird cutscene where the arm talks to you in the dreamland. Yeah, doesn't he go into, like, a dreamland and they have closure, and then they decide they're going to kick ass, and that's when you start tearing other people's wives out of their spinal columns?
Yeah, it could be.
I believe that's how that went. I'm probably wrong. But still, we haven't decided, is grappling hook the best bionic augment you can put on someone? Because you don't get one in Deus Ex. And that game's like the gold standard of putting crazy things onto a human being. Is
there an official scale somewhere? That, like the top one is Deus Ex, and then like Bionic Commando's in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, like low end you could go with like the bad guys in System Shock would be easy, because it's like there's a monkey with a half human face who wants to kill you.
That would be a pretty poor bionic enhancement.
Yeah. Don't put half a human face on a monkey face. They're not going to get on. They're not... I mean, they might have been in a committed relationship. I don't know how the future shakes out. Maybe you can marry a monkey.
Do you think that was the final draft of someone's experiment? Like, is this what their life's work was building towards?
I'm going to make Franklin half a monkey because he ate my stroganoff out of the fridge without asking me. It's pretty good. No, so yeah, Deus Ex, then Bionic Commando, and then the low end is basically enemies in video games that have robot parts.
How much training did Lad get prior to going into the war zone with this new weapon? Because it kind of feels like you're making it up as you go along. You're like, can I grab that guy? Can I push that box over?
It's true. Your upgrades are just you figuring out how to do new, reasonably mundane things with your hook, right?
Yeah, someone handed him the hook and was like, all right, get out there. Don't worry, I'll call you with tutorials.
I think I got it. I don't think this was meant to be a weapon. I think it was just like some equipment that they, use for loading and unloading trucks or whatever. And then like the one soldier just got it. He's like, oh, I'm using this. And they're like, no, it's not for weaponry. And then, no, I'm using this. This is going to be awesome. It just like runs in and he starts grabbing things and like, it kind of works. It's a good thing he was already a good soldier because he'd probably be dead.
If you go purely on the visual design, it was pretty clearly a container of hot dogs that got damaged in transit, and they're just leaking out everywhere. The arm in the PS3 Xbox version was notoriously looked like it was just full of hot dogs.
It looked like someone looked at too much Todd McFarlane art and was like, Spawn is cool, right, guys? And that arm was created. And I think you shoot your hand in that one. Like, the cable's inside that monstrous arm. But Bionic Commando, the original NES, it had to be Brad's theory that he wasn't supposed to have it. And they're like, he's going to get so much trouble. And then he blew up Hitler's head. And they're like, well, let's just call him the Bionic Commando and give him an award. He's not Lad, who we thought could only work in the warehouse because he's an idiot. He killed Hitler. Yeah, so maybe he's the accidental Bionic Commando, and that's why they didn't develop a better weapon to attach to a human being than a grappling hook. I don't really know what robotic thing you attach to a human that's a good thing.
I mean, I'm assuming that in Rearm 2, the mustache is also bionic.
He's a real big fan of Ron Jeremy, and he's like, I gotta do that. And Super Joe's like, no, please don't do that. And the guys in the warehouse are like, that's rad. And Lad's like, that's my name now.
It is totally gone after years of prison in the 3D version.
Oh, he's got the permanent 5 o'clock shadow in that one.
He's really had a number of extreme makeovers.
He gets really ripped in the last game. And going to prison with one arm has to be difficult. Because you're like, I once had a robotic arm, and that would help me here in prison instead of having no arm. He had to start questioning when his wife stopped coming to visit him. Like, what happened? Little did he know she was being murdered and turned into a robot arm. Yeah, so I guess it's a good weapon to put on a human, unless anyone has other suggestions. What would Adam Jensen say? That's the real question.
Where does Final Fantasy's Barrett fit on our bionic scale?
Oh, wow. Barrett may be the low end.
He's got a chain gun that somehow stays attached.
Yeah, we talked about this a while back. That would not work at all, because how do you reload your arm? And how do you keep every bone in your arm from breaking the first time you pull that trigger?
And really, as a two-armed person, I can carry a gun. I can carry many guns, and I can swap them at my leisure. So what advantage would I have sacrificing one of my hands to make it a gun that is hard? It would look cool.
Like, if you went, like, to the shooting range or something, like, everybody else would be like, man, that guy is super into guns. Like, I thought I was into guns, but, like, that guy cut off his arm and just put a machine gun there.
But what happens the first time you go to the restroom and you forget about your machine gun arm and you try to unzip your fly and accidentally shoot yourself in the crotch with a chain gun?
I'm pretty sure if your arm is a machine gun, like, that's not something you forget about ever.
That's fair. And Barrett's pretty cool. He doesn't like clouds, so...
All right, well, if we're going to bring Barrett into it as a possible low end, I'm going to go a step further and say the lady from Death Proof with the machine gun leg is probably even less practical than machine gun arm.
She could rocket jump.
I don't know if rocket jump actually works.
It worked in, was it Planet Terror?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she does a rocket jump in that.
Yeah, that... I don't know if we need to bring Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's work into this discussion, because...
Do you think we could get them to appear on the show?
No. I do not think we can do that, Brad. Bionic Commando. I guess it's a good thing. I mean, military, if you're listening, please stop killing wives to put them in robot arms. It's just not good for any. It's a bad PR look when people find out about it.
It doesn't seem like it'd be that important of a part of the manufacturing process. You know, like, it seems like an unnecessary step, I guess. You just use metal.
Maybe it's just like a psychological thing that once the soldier's like, I've gotten so much more powerful than you, you can't control me anymore. They're like, we killed your wife and put bits of her in that robot arm. And he's like, no.
I'm going to offer a counterpoint here. So Donald's taking the stance of, like, please stop doing this, it's horrible. What if we haven't gone far enough? What was like the problem is here that the majority of human relationships are these deep monogamous connections. But what if you took someone like a cult leader or a polygamist, like with many deep emotional connections to multiple spouses? You could replace all your limbs.
Ooh.
Yeah. You see where I'm going with this?
Okay, that's a fair counterpoint for killing people and putting them in robot limbs, I guess. It's a weird stance to take, Cort. You were pro-wife murder.
I didn't say I was pro-wife murder. Just that if killing one spouse gives you a bionic arm, clearly sacrificing multiple spouses, you could replace additional limbs, and that opens up additional possibilities that really haven't been explored here.
All right, guys, Bionic Commando. It's weird. It makes no sense, but it's fun to swing on things.
It was super fun to swing on things. This was the gold standard grappling hook game for me for many, many years. I'd have to think about what would have replaced it. Maybe Just Cause. Just Cause did a great job.
We could just call it Just Cause Alpha from now on.
Just Cause Alpha was on the NES, so... All right, Cort, any final thoughts on Bionic Commando?
It's got some great music. The NES original and the remakes have some fantastic Capcom soundtracks. I'm a fan.
Back when Capcom made video games that were not called Street Fighter V. Brad, any final thoughts on Bionic Commando?
This is the only game I can think of off the top of my head that features a shirtless old Hitler. So if that's something you're interested in a game, this is where that's kind of your reward for getting to the last boss.
But from another perspective, it's also the best game that contains a shirtless old Hitler.
If shirtless old Hitler is your thing, could you do me a favor and swipe over to the subscribe button and hit that so you're not subscribed anymore? Thanks. That should not be anybody's thing, guys. But I think that is going to do it for us. If you wouldn't mind telling a friend about the episode about old shirtless Hitler that's Brad and Cort's thing, I would appreciate it. If you could leave a review somewhere, even if you just go down on a street corner like, this show is kind of moderately okay, that would be appreciated. Cort, thanks for coming on by and talking about you're okay with wife murder.
I never said that. Did I say that?
Brad, did you hear that? He said, I'm going to take the counterpoint on this one to wife murder is bad.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's the second half of like being super into shirtless old Hitler is that you're pro wife murder.
There goes my career in politics. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for stopping by to talk about the Bionic Commando.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Donald, that was Brad, and we will see you next time. Alright. Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
And we are joined by Cort.
Also, hello.
Can we just redo that again, Brad?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I have a line.
Find my character. All
right. What is it? What's the thing that I say?
It's just, you've only been doing this for 60 some episodes, so.